Welcome to Lab Results, the Black Man Lab's online version of the Black Man Lab Live. We are live tonight. What is today? The 23rd of March. And we are excited to have a great conversation around our subject that we had this past Monday at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA, which was Black Men in Tech. Black Men in Technology. So we had a great audience, we had a great panel, and an amazing conversation. We're going to get to that shortly. Little background about where the Black Man Lab started. Started roughly about 5 years ago now, by four fathers who got together to have some other voices for their sons. We know quite often as fathers that our sons might tune us out, but they'll listen to an uncle, a best friend, somebody like that. They'll listen to a godfather, somebody other than us. Might say the exact same thing, but they'll listen to them more so than us. So that was the premise of it. But from that, we wound up bringing other brothers into the space that were experts in whatever those areas of interest the young folks had, and it grew. It grew from just being those four fathers and their sons to roughly over 250 black men every week meeting at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA to talk about different subjects every week that we don't normally have the opportunity to get together in a safe and sacred space to do that. So that's what it is, and that's where it's been. We're back after COVID, kind of put us in a space where we couldn't meet every week, but we met virtually. And now we're meeting back in person, so it's great to be able to be in the space. And we'll talk about that a little further as we go on here. One of the things that we do every week at the Black Man Lab is we make sure that we honor those that came before us, those shoulders of those who we stand on as we, continue to move through life. That will be proud of this work that we're doing. That will be proud of the Black Man Lab and those other organizations like the Black Man Lab. So what we do here on Lab Results is we just make a call to an ancestor every week. Whoever's on your mind, we hold a fist up and we call their name. So before I introduce my guest, I'm going to ask him to come on with me, and we're going to call on an ancestor, and then we're going to get into our conversation. So if we could, on the count of three, we're going to raise our fist and we're just going to call a name. One, two, three. Sylvester
Just
Williams.
Garvey.
Ashe. So we call those people because we know that they would be proud of this work, and quite often they'd be involved in the work as well. Without further ado, I want to bring on our guest because we had an amazing conversation on Monday. And not only that, we probably had the largest crowd that we've had since we've been back from COVID. And everybody seemed to be really engaged and didn't want to leave the conversation, but the Y closed, so we had to go outside and continue our conversation. Without further ado, let me bring on my brother. He's my bison brother, by the way. Um, Brother Don Dodds. Don, how you doing?
I'm phenomenal, man. Excited to be here with you. We had a great session the other night, and just really excited about connecting again.
Awesome, man. You shared some amazing gems sitting on the panel along with our other panelists. And I know that they were appreciated just based off of the conversations that I had with a lot of the folks in the room. Before we get into the conversations, one of the things that Lab Results is really about is the results, right? What got you to where you are today? So I always want to delve into the guests that we have on tonight. What got them to where they are today? What was the things that you did to matriculate through life to get to where you are today? So I always start way back when. Where were
Yeah,
you born? And tell me about your family.
man. My history is a long one. So I am the son of a pastor and a nurse.
Mm,
Um, they are in the Caribbean right now, retired, gone back, but my father was served in ministry for a long time. So one of the things that I always got to see as a man was my dad committed to service, servicing the community. Folks who are a lot less fortunate than we are. Um, he was always pouring in, and they were always at the house. So I
mm,
grew up around a wide range of kids, learned to fight, argue, debate, do everything, and kind of build your essence as a young man. I was also a really like voracious reader. For whatever reason, man, I used to just pick up like the encyclopedia because I just had a real thirst for knowledge. and just read as much as I could. But I would say that my parents are probably my biggest influence. We had a little family motto, it's my family motto that I use today, but it was passed down. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good gets better and your better gets best. So they always push that idea of being excellent. I don't care what you're going to do. Find something positive that you can do and pour in and just be great at it. So I think those are the foundational things that I got really, really early on. And one big tip I think that helped me to sort of develop the mindset that I have today, my mother, and I never really understood this, but my mother used to always tell me, you need to write your goals down. If you have an idea about something you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
write it down so you can hold yourself accountable. Because if you don't write it down, it's just a thought in your head, and it's gonna leave. Right, five other thoughts are gonna come in. So make sure you write that goal down, and make sure that you hold yourself accountable. And there's something empowering about looking at that goal and knowing that you accomplished it and moving on to the next one. Right, if you're not doing that, then I think it's hard for you to start to envision yourself as a successful person. So that's one of the tips I would give.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful one, and your family motto is a great one as well. Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have two younger brothers,
Okay.
and we are super tight, super tight. In fact, one of the things that we do, man, that's probably a little bit different is we actually have a prayer session. So
Hmm.
every Sunday night, my brothers and I get on the phone for about 4 hours and we
Hmm.
talk. We find ways to encourage each other, build each other up, because you know what society's doing every day, right? It's beating you
Absolutely.
down, right? So as a family man and as just brothers, navigating this world, we're all entrepreneurs. One of the things that we do is really make that time to pour into each other. Another thing that's kind of crazy is we work out every morning. We're in different cities, but we work
Uh,
out every morning via video. So we do abs for about 30 minutes
wow.
at 9:30 in the morning. So my meetings and everything else are scheduled around those times. I'm
I
not
love
letting
it.
anything interfere with that.
I love it, man. That's huge. My brother is he's a Secret Service agent. Been in Secret Service for he's actually retired, but he still works for the Secret Service. He works out every day, like twice a day, including swimming. I couldn't keep up with him, so
That's next
and
level, man. Next
yeah, he's
level.
next level. So I appreciate you all doing that, though. That's good stuff. That's good stuff, man. So your sons, I know I've seen them. One of them's always in the lab. Tell me about that. Tell me about your immediate family now.
So, man, I have an awesome wife. She's phenomenal, incredibly supportive. If I tell her we're going to the moon tomorrow, she's going to look at me and know that I have a plan to go to the moon,
Yeah,
and we're going to make it happen. So
love it.
that's one of the foundational things for me that works really well. But I have three amazing sons, man. My first son's 25, second son's 21, my last son is 16, and just phenomenal young men. I think they all kind of have the entrepreneurial mindset, right? So they all
Mm,
have an idea. It's all they've seen all their lives, right? Again, that idea of pouring into community, giving back. My first son is really an inspiration to me in many ways because all the things that he talked about since he was three,
mm,
he's literally doing. He's very, very passionate about community and about service, and he's always been that way.
mm.
So he makes me accountable. He makes me stay accountable.
Hey, he's in the space all the time, so I love having him in there. He comes to me all the time with ideas and thoughts, and it's great to see that. So, and he's got you there. So,
Yeah, yeah. Indeed.
so let's talk about Monday. What was you? I always love to ask this question to folks that are new to the space. What did you think when you walked in? What were your initial thoughts? What did you think about the lab?
Man, I felt about the lab the same way I felt when I stepped on Howard's campus for the first time, right?
Ooh.
It was a refreshing feeling of empowerment. Um, you know, everybody was so engaging. Everybody was so, it felt like family. It didn't feel like I knew a couple people, but
Sure.
it literally felt like I walked into a family. Everybody was just not even knowing that I was one of the speakers, right? People were
Hmm.
just engaged and talking and sharing, and
Yeah.
that was really, really empowering from the jump. And I
Right.
think once everything got started, it was really interesting to see different people from different walks of life, all different walks of life, really
Hmm.
engaging and excited about, what we can do to make an impact and make a difference. That
Yeah.
was powerful to me.
That's a great statement, though, man. I remember that stepping on Howard's
Yeah.
campus. Yeah,
Yeah.
same, same. That's the thing that's hard to quantify, right? Like
Yeah.
I try to explain to people you got to get in the space, right? And the
Absolutely.
reason you got to get in the space is that feeling. And I
Yep.
think that so much comes out of that feeling, right? Where you get to the point of where you guys are doing the panel discussion, and you can tell the level of engagement. It's because the environment, is conducive for it. So, um,
Absolutely. It
yeah,
feeds it. My 16-year-old who was with me, um, you know, of course, he talked to his older brother. So if I told him about coming, he'd be like, Dad,
yeah,
no, you
yeah,
know.
right, right.
But his older brother was like, you got to come. And so when we left, he said, Dad, that was amazing. He said,
No, it's
he
beautiful.
said, I want to make sure we get back. So that to me spoke
Yeah.
volumes from a 16-year-old, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's interesting because we have that. We have a lot of young folks that stay in the room, and you sometimes. What I do all the time is when I'm up front, I'm kind of observing, right? While Molly does the vast majority of the talking, I'm observing to see how people are engaged, and what I always check into is the young folks, and it amazes me that so many of them are just like this. They're really locked
Exactly.
in to a conversation that I don't know that they would normally have that. You know what I mean? I just don't know that they would normally have that. Um, so let's talk about that a little bit. We were talking about the world of tech as it relates to black men. Let's talk about your journey into that, where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so it was actually a Howard professor who said to me, I was working at a gym at the time
Hmm.
in Silver Spring, Maryland. I was working at a gym, and he played racquetball at the gym, and he taught me racquetball. And he said, "Man, you're really, really a smart guy." He said, "You should really look into this internet thing." And I didn't know anything about the internet, man. This was in the early 90s.
Hmm.
I wasn't even a computer guy, which is really the interesting thing, right? I went to Howard initially to study medicine. So I wasn't even a computer guy. I really didn't even type my papers. I mean, I would
Hmm.
write my paper, I'd write my actual papers. I always had a girl like type up my stuff for me. So I never used computers. I was not a computer guy. And when he said that to me, he said, you should really check it out. And I said, all right, well, I will. I grabbed a book, an HTML book, and I literally said, wow, this is interesting. Now, when I got on the web, it was just a blue screen, IP addresses. There was no fancy stuff that we get to see now.
Hmm.
Probably 6 or 7 months in, AOL was a thing, right? America Online.
Hmm.
And so it was sticking floppy disks in
Sure.
and, connecting, with a dial-up phone
The
really
buzz
slow.
sound. Yeah.
Exactly. And if somebody called you, then you lost your internet connection, all that crazy stuff. So that's really how I got started. And at that point, my mentality is always like, okay, I got this thing. Let me try to figure out what I can do. So I started talking to people about websites, and people were like, man, this internet thing is a fad, and it's not going anywhere. And so
How
people were
wrong
like,
they were.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've had that a couple of times. People tell me, yeah, it's not going anywhere. So I did that for a while. I built a couple of really simple websites in DC, and then moved to Atlanta in '97. When I moved here, there was a site. I think it was called Computer Jobs. I was just looking around for opportunities. Anyway, I ended up getting a contract with Bell South, and our task was to move folks who were, traditionally relying on the yellow pages to the web. So
Hmm.
even that was a task, right? Trying to get people to move away from the old school thinking of All right, somebody's looking for business. They open the yellow pages, they skim through things and call somebody. But we were successful in doing that. And so I grew that business, did really well, developed an e-commerce piece for that business right around the same time Amazon was doing their thing. But I sold mine. So I sold my business to a company in Florida and sold my software to a company in Florida. And I was in my 20s. So I thought, man, I'm good. This is good.
Home run.
Yeah. And fortunately, I got out before the crash. But at that time, I had a non-compete, so I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't step back into that space. I did a lot of consulting. I did Microsoft consulting for about 9 years, worked with a number of hospitals, and just try to bring them up to speed as far as tech is concerned. So that was kind of my initial foray into the space. And literally after that, everything became driven by tech, right? So I don't care if you're in the car business, if you're in the hotel business, if you're in the restaurant business, it's all tech today. Everything is tech. It cannot be escaped or avoided.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's something that George, who was on the panel, said was that because somebody in the audience asked about um, areas of tech, and he was talking about it's everywhere. You do
Yeah.
this, that's tech. You do that, that's tech. Yeah. So let me ask you this: what going through the journey that you went through to get where you currently are? What was it like opening doors? In other words, were you met with opposition because of who you are um, quite often, and how did you manage that?
Yeah. Opposition is always going to be a part of the game. But, you know, sometimes, man, the reality of the world is people form stigmas, or people have stigmas and people have stereotypes about who we are and what we do and what we're capable of or what we're not capable of. So I think you always have that, right? You always have, the opposition looking at you, wondering, are you capable of doing what you say you can do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main thing for me was, okay, this is another thing I got from my mother. She always used to say, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So in my head, I used to think, okay, if I have to work twice as hard to get half as far, that means I need to work 4 times as hard to actually catch up. And then I figured out, well, it's not really about the hard work. I got to work really smart. So I'm going to work smarter, right? 8 times the input that I have to give. And so that's what I literally did. I find ways. One of the guests said this on the panel too. This is actually one of our taglines: build better relationships. I'm a big believer in just building relationships. So finding a way to connect with people. Now, if I'm a guy who doesn't know any Spanish, okay, but I want to go into the Spanish speaking population, what I have to do is I got to find somebody who is really adept at speaking Spanish, right? To have them help me get into those doors that may be closed to me. So I did that very, very strategically, finding the right kinds of people to help put me in a position to be able to have the conversation. And then, being able to know enough and speak intelligently about what it is we do and how we do it, how we can ultimately solve problems, I think was very, very instrumental. So, I think the nugget I want to say here is building relationships, networking is really, really key, knowing how to do that and really building authentic relationships.
Mm-hmm. And what about when you ran into situations where um, folks weren't trying to build a relationship with you? Because of here's a black man in an area that um, probably isn't probably is dominated by folks that aren't black,
Right.
right? So what were your kind of moves to navigate that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I did, and I've done it pretty successfully. Like I said, if you got a Spanish guy and you're trying to move into a Spanish community, I think if you're moving into a community where people are already prejudging you, then you have to be strategic about that and say, okay, I need to make sure that my workforce is diverse enough so that we can go have a seat table, because sometimes I'm going to be shut out, but somebody else who doesn't look like me won't be. And so, perhaps they're able to help knock on the door and build that relationship, right? So it starts to become less about race and more about, okay, is this company capable of doing what needs to be done? Sometimes you just need somebody to be able to help push that door open for you. And so that's one of the things that I've done really intentionally, really strategically. I always talk about having a diverse workforce, because I really do believe that, you know, we're phenomenal people, but I think having a diverse ideas, diverse thoughts, an approach to doing different kinds of industries and businesses are really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that everybody's experiences help to mold what you need to get to the goal, right? So that makes
Absolutely.
great sense. Um, what to date would you say would be two things? One, your biggest um, success that you've seen, but before that, the biggest challenge that you've had.
So personally or professionally?
I'd say professionally. We'll keep it
Okay.
sometimes they blend, but you
Right.
make the call.
Yeah. So I think the biggest success I think that we've had is as a company is the ability to build and scale. Right. I think scalability is really important. We started here in Atlanta. We're now in a total of 7 cities, so 6 cities in addition to the Atlanta market. One of the things that I was really intentional about doing is making sure that we aren't pigeonholing ourselves into one space. So, we do well in the financial wealth and management industry. We do very well in healthcare. We do very well in legal. We do very well in government. We've got a contract with the Army. And so I think finding ways to tap into industries that people don't typically want to go into is something that has been exciting, has been a phenomenal challenge. But we found a way to really win by building those relationships. Another big thing that I really wanted to do was to become more of a thought leader, right? So I have all these great ideas, and I develop people and processes and technology, and I talk about that all the time. But one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to write for Forbes. So now I write um, an article probably once or twice a month on different topics related to digital marketing. That's a big deal, right? So that helps to position me as a thought leader in a space where traditionally there are not a lot of us, right? Even in fact, I would say on a monthly basis, I'm either quoted along with other digital marketing agency folks, and generally, I don't know, there might be a dozen people, and then there's this one face. My name. That's it. Yeah.
Dots.
It's yeah, it's fascinating, but I want to be able to help change that, right? There
Sure.
needs to be more. There need to be more faces that look like us.
And I think that that's a key point that you're making. Being able to have more faces that look like us. I think that there are a ton of young folks out there that are more than capable of
Absolutely.
playing in this space and being very successful, but they have to see it, right?
Yep.
And that's really, again, not to belabor the Black Man Lab, but that's what it's about, is giving our young folks the opportunity to see folks like you and the other brothers that were on the panel, that are you know in some cases wildly successful in these spaces that they don't necessarily know about, right? Um,
Correct.
but they may very well have a skill set that fits very well into the work. What would you say are some of those um, kind of things, like when you're working with people? What do you look for? Like what are the kind of traits of someone that you think will be successful in that space, in that tech space?
That's a really great question. There are very specific things that I look for. I'm probably going to be a little bit biased here. I went to Howard initially as a med student, right? And I just pivoted. Nobody told me to pivot. There was no entrepreneurial class, at least that I knew of, right? There was no go get, this development degree. There was none of that. So I look for hustle. I look for go-getter, somebody who is able to really say, I want answers to this, and I'm going to go find the answers, and I'm going to make it happen. Somebody who's not just sitting around going, okay, well, can you tell me how this works, or tell me? I'm fine with taking questions. I love to take questions. I love to ask. I love to answer questions rather, and I love to pour into people. But I look for very specific things that tell me that you have the drive, that hustle is so important, that thirst for knowledge. Um, One of the things that I think is critical to succeed in this space is the ability to think critically, right? So the ability to problem solve. Every business, in my opinion, every business is in the business of solving problems. That's what, there's an issue, there's a challenge, there's a problem. All right, let's create a business to solve that problem. I think those are the most successful businesses, right? So I like to look at people who are problem solvers by nature. They are
Sure.
not making excuses, and they're finding ways to make things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, in my past life before doing this, I was a VP of business development. So in hiring people, that's always been one of the. I totally understand what you're saying, and I had a philosophy which was, "Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions." Meaning,
Absolutely.
think it through. You think it through, and come to me. You might be wrong,
Right.
but at least I know you thought it through, and now we got something to work with. Versus now, your work becomes my work, right? If that
Exactly.
was the case, I don't need you, right? So
Right.
that makes great sense, man. I appreciate that. Um, so when what are the areas like? So what you do right now? Um, Tell me about areas of that or channels where people can work in those spaces, right? So, um, how what are the different areas that people work in?
So for us, I can't speak for every digital marketing agency, but for us very specifically, and one of the things that defines us or differentiates us from other digital marketing agencies, we really focus on digital strategy. It's one of the reasons that I created the company in 2013. I stepped back into the space after my non-compete was over. I wanted to come back in and find a way to dominate, right? And so part of the way um, I sought to dominate is to really look at what people weren't doing.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's doing strategy. Everybody's doing things in a very tactical manner, right? It's oh, I need a website. Oh, I need some social media. Oh, I need SEO. I need email marketing. Oh, that's all great, but none of that works effectively without strategy. So digital strategy is a big part of it. And what's that all about, right? It's basically putting a plan in place to meet a specific set of goals. All goes back to problem solving again. I'm big on problem solving. So the first big bucket that we play in is strategy and research. We do competitive analysis, we do market positioning, we do SWOT analysis. All those things are part of our strategic process. So somebody who understands that, even if you don't understand it, I can teach that to you really quickly and easily if you have the desire and you have the desire to learn and the passion to continue to be a continuous learner, right? You can get in there. So digital strategy is one piece. Then the next big piece is the web design and development component. That includes everything from user interface to user experience to iOS app development and Android app development as well as web application development itself. So it's talking about apps specifically for the web and the web-based environment. Now, obviously, everything needs to be mobile friendly today, right? Because 60% of users are on a mobile device. So we always take sort of a mobile first strategy to everything. That's the second big bucket. The third bucket would be analytics and marketing. And I'm really an analytics nerd. So for me, I'm extremely data driven. I don't have a good gut and sense about what's happening and what's not happening, but my gut isn't always right. And so looking at the data to understand trends, looking at the data to understand what's happened historically, where are things moving. I always want to be ahead of the trend. And that's one of my gifts, I think, is being able to um, spot trends as they are about to occur or
Hmm.
as they are occurring really early and capitalize on them to help scale a business. I had the knack for doing that, and it's worked pretty well.
That's
So
awesome stuff.
those are the three big areas, and anybody can jump in. Literally, if you have the desire, I, I don't want to say this like this, but I really don't care about a college degree. I
Mm.
don't care if you have a degree or not. You don't need to have a degree. What I need you to do is be intelligent. You need to know how to communicate. You need to be a good listener and a good hustler. Again, just a go getter. Um, I'm on the board of Clayton State University, where I've been able to recruit students. We are in the Georgia Tech sort of Tech Square area downtown the office is. And so we can also recruit from Georgia Tech. We've pulled in a couple of students for internships there as well. So Clayton State, Morehouse, Georgia Tech, I mean, that's where we see access to talent. But the
Hmm.
reality is talent could be anywhere. I'm sure talent was in our room the other day, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
um, I would love to be able to tap some talent from there because I
For
think that
sure. That leads to my next question, which is, does your organization do internships, which I'm assuming you do based off of what you just said?
absolutely. I think that's the key. That's the foundation. We're always looking for people. A big part that I didn't mention as well is just people who love to write. Content is king, right? Content is incredibly important.
Mm.
So having the ability to write, and maybe the average article that we write for clients is probably about 2,000 words. If you're not a
Mm.
voracious, writer, reader, communicator in that world,
Mm.
perhaps maybe social media content is more your thing, right?
Mm.
You can write for different areas. I mean, it's it's such a wide open space and opportunity. I tell people, even if we don't offer a particular service and you have an idea that you want to bring to us, we can open up another division and
Mm.
have you run it. I mean, the opportunity and the potential is unlimited.
Mm. That's beautiful, man. Because it's as you're talking, I'm thinking about so many young men that have come through our program that actually do right, and it's funny because you never really think about that as something that people have a great capability of doing. And then I see some of the stuff these young folks have written, and I'm like, man, when you writing the book, I'm just
Right,
I'm like,
right,
I want to
exactly.
force them to, but the reality is maybe that's not what they want to do. They don't necessarily want to write a book, but to your point, to write content might be right up their alley. So um,
Absolutely.
I will definitely keep all of that in mind as we move forward. Um,
Awesome.
so tell me, what did you? Were there any questions that you were? I love to ask this question of our panelists. Were there any questions that came across that you thought were just amazing, or just kind of caught you off guard? Anything like that?
No, I think most of the questions were pretty, traditional questions, people looking for funding ideas, where to get funding, how do you get started doing, development, maybe
Mm.
even how to create a business. I know one brother asked about, how do I move from an idea to
Mm.
actually getting people to take me seriously. And
Mm.
and really what I say, you can imagine I get pitched a, a ton of things every day. What I would say is find a way to work your idea. Do as much research as you possibly can. Find out whether your idea is really meaningful or will really solve a problem. Sometimes, if you are the idea person and you don't have the ability to do the tech, then guess what? You need to go to some networking events and find somebody who is not the idea person, but they're the tech person. Maybe that person becomes your chief technology officer, right? So you guys form a partnership. Always tell people, don't be greedy. Don't try to have 100% ownership of everything. It's okay to partner with people and build something big, build something great, build something lasting that can contribute to your legacy. And it's better to do that than, 50% of $1 billion is much better than 100% of $10.
Right. Much better. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one of the questions that was asked was about, uh, well, it was this more, I think, more of a statement, which was about being cool in tech. You know, trying to get the kids to see it as cool. How and in my mind, I thought to myself, I was like, well, nowadays, I think people kind of look at tech as being cool because of the people that your
Building.
Elon Musk's of the world and so on. But what were your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think people do generally see tech as cool, but it depends. I think, and I mentioned this. I don't know if my 16-year-old thinks what I do is cool. You know,
Right.
I try to get him engaged in certain things. He's like, no, Dad, you know, I want to do something else. So I try to be really open to
Uh,
the idea, but everything ultimately is tech. So I think sometimes people think of tech as just the guy who's sitting down, and programming, right?
sure.
24/7. Tech is much, much bigger than that. Tech is about solving, business processes. It's about, culture. It's about everything that we do is tech driven. And in the future, as we continue to move through this, AI, the artificial intelligence
Yeah.
space, it's everything is
Yeah.
going
It's
to
just
go
gonna be
through the
more.
roof, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a you mentioned earlier about you having the foresight and to be kind of ahead of the curve in terms of things that are coming. That's something that I thought about. Um, AI being it's clearly on the horizon to grow even
Yeah.
more, and I'm always in my mind, but I'm not a tech person. I'm always like, well, what would be the next big thing as it relates to that, so I can
Right.
get in on it now. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
Well, I think there are a lot of different things, and I think the world is changing, right? I just got off the phone with a client, and one of the things that we were talking about was the Ford truck, right? So they are an automotive dealer, and a few I don't know a few months ago, the big deal was, hey, people can't find cars right now, right? People can't find their new vehicles, so everyone's
Mm-hmm.
looking for used trucks. And then all of a sudden, we have this wave where everything starts shifting and gas prices start going up. So now people are not looking for trucks as much. Now they're looking for electric vehicles. So in the blink of an eye, things are changing. I think, rather than always try to, predict what's coming, I think that we could pay attention to what's going on. Really kind of focus in on that because things are changing rapidly. So something that used to take maybe, a year before can now happen in a month. Blink of an eye, all of a sudden, big market shift. You have to be able to adapt to that. And I think as a marketing company, that's one of the things that we do. We rely on the data to help us, understand trends and what's happening and
That's
pivot
awesome.
accordingly.
Yeah. Now, what you said you're including Atlanta, a total of seven
Mm-hmm.
cities. What other cities are you in?
DC, Miami, Chicago, LA, DC, Miami, Chicago, LA, Houston, Atlanta, and did I leave anything? Oh, in New York. New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Now, do you have offices, or are you just doing business in each one?
No, no. So we have clients. We have clients literally all over the world. No, no. We have offices. So one of the things for us, the reason that we decided to move into those spaces, we decided to move into those spaces because we have a good client base there, right? But we literally serve clients all over the world. I mean, we've got a client in Thailand.
Oh wow.
It's a yoga retreat facility, Samahita retreat. And those guys are phenomenal. It's amazing the amount of broad range of industries that we play in.
Uh,
And our clients are literally East Coast, West Coast, all around the world.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And did you see when you started? How long has M16 been in business?
So yeah, we started in 2013, and the idea at the time was just
90.
to, you know, come in and dominate the space. and, And once we felt like we had a really good foothold, there was no plan to initially expand, into that
Mm-hmm.
space. COVID actually demanded that we expand because
Mm-hmm.
we just got an influx of business when COVID hit. So, I mean,
That was
again,
going to be, yeah, that was going to be a question I had for you, is because so many businesses during COVID took a hit one way or the other. Um, what did it do for you? How did that expand your business? Explain that a little bit.
I would say that quarter over quarter, we averaged 30% growth quarter over quarter,
Mm.
every quarter. Um,
And
it,
why was that? What was the reasoning behind it? Was it because everything now was digital?
yeah, I think there was a huge shift. So one of the things that I did, again, I remember going and talking to the landlord and said, well, yeah, look, we're not going to be in the office as much. So I want to adjust a couple of things. He's like, this is going to last for 2 weeks. I said, I don't think so. I think this is going to go on for a little while. I started to think of, all right, what can we do to try to tell the story? I mentioned that we're in the wealth management advisory, healthcare, um, you know, legal, industrial, all kinds of spaces. And I started to see people literally scrambling. Again, I read data all the time. So I'm looking to see what's happening. People are literally in panic mode.
Mm-hmm.
And even restaurants are like, okay, nobody can come into the restaurant. How can we serve clients? And guess what? You now need to have an online platform, if you didn't have it before, to allow people to order online and come into the parking lot, buy a number, and and then pick up their food, right? Everything in many industries started to have that shift. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were inundated with calls about, how can you help us?
Mm-hmm.
Digital marketing was just a great place to be.
Just blew up.
Yeah, yeah. We were doing very, very well.
Uh,
Um, but COVID certainly helped to, give us that extra turbo boost.
sure. Well, I imagine now that you kind of put it in that context, everything had to change for
Had to.
those businesses to remain. There was either the choice was they had to change or go out of business, and
100%.
I'd venture to say that those that didn't do that are out of business.
Correct.
It's funny because today I was over by a restaurant that I used to take clients to, um, up in Perimeter, and the restaurant itself was gone, and I was like, that was a banging restaurant. Like people were there all the time, and I couldn't imagine. But then I thought about it, and I was like,
They
COVID could have
didn't
took them
adapt.
out. Yeah, they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
adapt. Yeah, that's
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 important.
that's wild. So, you're in the business, and it sounds like tech in itself is about that more than anything, the ability to adapt. Um,
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit, as you know it to be even outside of your purview of what you do, as it relates to technology and tech.
Yeah, again, it just touches every area, right? So even churches, for example,
Mm,
even churches needed to figure out, okay, how do we reach our parishioners, right? Folks, they still want to worship,
sure.
and all of a sudden, we can't congregate in large masses. So how do we worship? How do we communicate? These folks were telling us about social media.
Mm,
Um, I don't think we ever used Zoom. Right? Zoom was not on our radar. We use Google, mostly Google products. This is not a
okay.
promotion, right? But we use mostly Google products as a Google partner. So we would do what we call Google Hangout meetings
Mm,
for our internal meetings and meetings with clients. But Zoom became a big deal, right? So all of a sudden it was Zoom meeting here, Zoom meeting there. You're meeting with clients and now they're sitting in their house. Kids running around in the back. It became sort of technology meets people, meets business process,
yeah.
and we all had to adapt. I think everybody was understanding. Had COVID not happened, and the force or the need or the strong need to use Zoom, and see what was going on in people's real life, um, it would be more difficult, right? People would probably look down on the idea like, hey, why is your kid running around? We're having a staff meeting. But
Right.
I think it all changed. I think it all changed. And even the real estate, we can watch the madness that has happened there and is continuing to happen in terms of the low inventory, high prices, all of it, tech driven. Zillow's coming out with new data all the time saying, yeah, we think, or we were predicting it was going to be, 11 to 15%. Now it's going to be 22%. I saw the numbers today and looking like they're going to be even higher, before they start to peak and maybe slightly decline. But it's just really incredible and insane to see. And tech helps to give us a lot of information to prepare us for what's to come.
Yeah, it's amazing to me um, how Zoom, like we're on Zoom right now,
Right,
but how Zoom became the meeting room. You know what I mean? Like and it also, whether it's Zoom or any of the other Google Hangouts, any of the other apps that do this, how they also allowed some humanism to come into how people do business, right? Because,
yes,
like you said, I was on a call one day, and this is about something for the Black Man Lab, and the lady that I'm talking to, we're having a pretty in depth conversation over a long period of time, and all of a sudden you just see a little hand pop up with with a bunch of chocolate in it.
right,
It's, mommy, can I have this? Can I have this? And it was just funny 'cause she was smashing the chocolate, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so," and all I could do was laugh, you know.
yeah,
And she's like, "It's my
this
two
is
year
life,
old," you know. And I'm
right,
like, "Hey, dude, we're actually at home right now,
right,
so those
right,
things are
and
gonna
and
happen."
and you know what? And it's okay, it's
Yeah,
okay. So,
it humanizes it. So,
yeah,
um, before we get out of here, because we're up against the clock, one of the things that I'm always interested in, and we always talk about, um, are habits, rituals, and disciplines. The things that we do on a daily basis that kind of help us to navigate, especially us as black men, help us to navigate the world and keep us moving forward in both our personal and professional lives. So I'm going to ask you that about your habits, rituals, and disciplines, kind of things that you do on a daily basis. You gave me about you and your brothers getting
right.
together, which I think is beautiful. But what else do you do like on a daily basis that are just kind of your go tos?
For me, man, one of the things I do when I wake up first thing in the morning is prayer. Prayer for me is really important. I actually have an acronym um, that I use in the word prayer. And it's kind of just my philosophy, right? I've taken the things that my parents have shared with me, and I literally created this acronym that I call the 6 keys to success. And it's maintaining so P would be being positive. My mother used to always say, it is your attitude more than your aptitude that can often elevate you to a higher altitude. So I think having the attitude, that positive mindset, no matter what's going on, sometimes, you know, my wife is up, she turns on the television and I'm hearing the news. Rah, rah. I'm like, I want to cut that down, please. Let's turn that off. I need my mind to be clear. Now, I think it's important to listen to the news, but too much of the media, too much negativity does something bad to me. And so I know that, and I understand I need to shut that off. Right? Too much trash going into my head makes for a very trashy day. So the first letter in there is P, is be positive, and then I would say R, resolve. Right, quitters never win, and and winners don't quit. So you got to keep moving. You got to realize that things are going to be tough. You're always going to have things. You're going to call someone, or someone you're engaging with something. Somebody's going to tell you no. No is okay. You know, um, you keep going until you get a yes, and you find the right relationships to cultivate. Um, the third letter is A. Action. Action is important. Um, I say this, action. If you think about it, I used to always use this example with my kids. If there are 1,000 birds sitting on a wire and two of them decide to fly away, how many birds are left? Um, and people say, 998. Well, no, there are not 998 birds left because they decided to fly away, but they actually never flew. Right? People
Mm,
always decide that they want to do things, but so every day I try to be really intentional about not just deciding to do something. That's why you write the goals down, right? But actually doing it. You got to take the action to make it happen. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing I'd say is ultimately we're responsible for what we do, right? So what you say to yourself becomes what you think becomes what you do consistently becomes a habit, and your habits determine whether you fail or succeed. So thinking about what you do and your responsibility, right? I could blame this person, I could blame that person, but ultimately I need to be accountable, and I need to look at myself in the mirror and make it happen. And then E, this is the fifth one for excellence. And I talked about that already. What you say to yourself, I mean, a good, better, best, never let it rest until your good gets better and your better gets best. That's the whole excellence piece. And then the R is for relationships. And I think having the important kinds of relationships, I said I start off everything with a prayer. So for me, um, the world is rough. We've got all kinds of isms in the world: racism, sexism. The isms are just long, and you can really get beat down by that every day. But I think having the mindset where, all right, God's got me. I got to do some things now. It's not just that God's got me, right? I have to take action and do all those things. But I think that relationship piece, first with God for me, is everything. And then, my wife, my kids, I always believe that you've got to be mentored by someone, but you also have a responsibility to mentor other people. So all those are part of the essential relationships that I think we need to be intentional about fostering every day. So that's kind of my mantra, the way that I live, and the things that I focus on every single day to keep me going.
man, I love all of that. That's right in line with kind of what we kind of preach at the lab, man, and it's that whole, if you stay in that positive space, right? It's kind of the laws of reciprocity find you.
Yes,
I want a prayer group, and we meet every morning, and which is one of my habits, rituals, and disciplines. And um, this morning, I was actually doing the prayer, and it led me to talk about the laws of reciprocity and how that relates to God. Right?
yep,
We know that as we pray right, and we stay prayerful, we stay in this space of thankfulness. Somehow, some way, goodness finds you. Right?
absolutely, absolutely.
And it's usually tenfold to whatever you were putting into it. You know what I mean? So,
That's correct.
you find yourself, you help somebody out. Next thing you know, you're getting some blessings that you didn't expect. But yeah, that's that staying in that positive space, and then I like to take an action too, because so often you mentioned it a little earlier about stuff in your head. We have these great ideas,
Right.
and you don't act on them in some way, whether that's to write them down, whether that's to actually move forward on them. Something else comes in and pushes it out, and then you
Right.
forgot all
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Has that
That's what
happened to
happens
you
in life.
before?
A
Yeah,
hundred percent, a hundred
yeah,
percent. That's why
yeah,
you literally really have to write them down. My head sometimes is just filled with all kinds of stuff, man. Their ideas coming to me all the time, um, and thank God for our phones, right?
I
Because
know.
now
Yeah,
it's just I can talk it
yeah,
and record it.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's what I do. I just go on my notes now, and I just
exactly.
either I type it in or I'll just talk it in. But yeah, completely love all of that, man. And of course, the relationships piece is huge. Again, but it goes back to being positive, because if you're positive, you find those right relationships, and then that reciprocity finds you as well. Brother, we're up against the clock. I am going to go ahead and end this like we do, just like we did at the lab, and you got to experience it. We end every week, we do our link in this chain, and that's done so that we stay connected, right? We want everybody that's in that room to feel that, and understand that we are all integral to each other, especially us as black men, because there's so many things against us in society, and we can get, that's a whole nother conversation, but we know it. So we've lived it, we know it. So it's important for us to have that link together. you and I, we didn't get to hang at Howard. We were there at the
Right.
same time, but we had some shared experiences, and so I know that that makes you a strong and great brother. So we're brothers going for it, and
Yes,
I'm
sir,
glad.
indeed.
Yeah, and I'm glad you got to spend the time with us. And of course, always welcome back into space, and always welcome to share your gems with the audience there. So one of the things too, I'll tell you real quick before we get off, we're gonna have a workshop dealing with technology and all the different tentacles of technology. So would love to be able to get you in as a guest to talk to the folks when we do get that
Absolutely.
going. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
we'd
keep
love to.
yeah, I'll
Yeah, yeah.
keep you in tune with that. And then your other son is going to be on a panel to
Yes.
talk about YouTube soon.
Correct.
So I'm
Correct.
looking forward to that. Looking
Yes.
forward. You should make sure you're in the building when he's there.
Yeah, we will be there.
Awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
we will be.
So we'll go ahead and we're gonna link up like we're linked up here, brother. And then just if you can repeat after me, I'm a link in this chain,
We're linking this chain
and it won't break here.
and it won't break here.
I'm a link in this chain,
I'm a link in this chain.
and it won't break here.
Won't break here.
We are links in this chain,
We are links in this chain
and we won't break here.
and we won't break here.
Ashe. Thank you again, bro. Appreciate you, man.
Thank
And
you, brother.
I'll be in touch. We'll talk even further about the. So I got some guys I can think of that maybe we can look at if you're doing some internships or whatever. You know
Yeah,
that we
man.
can
I mean, lots of opportunity. I also want to say just, thank you, right? Thank you for the work and the commitment that you do. I know that it's not easy, and it's certainly challenging. I would love to be able to support in any way that I can. So I'm just putting that out there, and I'm looking forward to the next workshop and doing whatever we can. And I'd love to be able to tap some folks from that lab, right? So we have some success stories. I'm a big proponent of creating success stories. So let's see what we could do there. But
for
most
sure,
really,
for sure,
thank you so much
for
for
sure.
your
Hey man,
commitment and
glad
dedication.
this the work we're supposed to be doing. So I'm glad to do it and glad to have brothers like you in the space, bro. So thanks again.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate you, man.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, brother.
All right.
All
Take
right,
care now. Bye.
see you.